Welcome to all of you today here at the Fairmont Hotel in downtown Chicago, as well as those who are joining virtually from your offices and homes around the country. Again, I'm Mary Dillon, the chair of the Economic Club of Chicago, and we are all joining today to hear from our guest speaker, Secretary Gina Raimondo with the U.S. Department of Commerce. But first, we are also very fortunate today to have a woman with us that's very familiar to many in the room to introduce our speaker. And she probably does not need an introduction, but I'm going to do that anyways. We're lucky to have Penny Pritzker here. Penny, of course, was a longtime director of the Economic Club of Chicago and a former Secretary of Commerce herself. She actually spoke to the club back in 2016 when she was the Obama administration Secretary of Commerce, and again in 2019 as part of a P33 program on Chicago's tech revolution. Since finishing her tenure as Secretary of Commerce, Penny has truly doubled down on her hometown. She returned to her investment firm, PSP Partners, which builds businesses in technology, services, industrials, and real estate sectors. She launched P33 to make Chicago a top-tier, more inclusive tech city, and her philanthropy has given millions and catalyzed millions more to increase access to opportunity across our great city, especially on the south and west sides. And recently, Penny was elected as a member of President Biden's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. Go Penny, that's pretty cool. So, without any further ado, please welcome business leader, philanthropist, public servant, and incredible friend to this city, Penny Pritzker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for the very kind introduction. It is now my terrific honor to be here with all of you and to introduce my friend and our nation's 40th Commerce Secretary, Gina Raimondo. Secretary Raimondo was formerly the 75th governor of Rhode Island and its first female governor. She graduated with honors from Harvard, where she was recognized as the top economics student in her class. I was not the top economics student in my class, so we're definitely trading up in Secretaries of Commerce. She won a Rhodes Scholar to Oxford University, where she earned a doctorate, and she later graduated from Yale Law School. Wanting to start her own business and be close to her family after her schooling, she returned home to Rhode Island and founded Point Judith Capital, a venture capital firm. In November 2010, Secretary Raimondo was elected to serve as the treasurer of Rhode Island, where she tackled the state's $7 billion unfunded pension liability. During her time as governor, Secretary Raimondo kick-started the state's economy and made record investments in infrastructure, education, and job training. When Secretary Raimondo was elected governor, her state had the highest unemployment in the nation. When she left the governor's office, Rhode Island's unemployment rate was the lowest it had been in 30 years, and her leadership during the early days of the COVID crisis was hailed as a model by many newspapers, including the New York Times. Personally, I've been blessed to know Gina for a decade and worked closely with her while she was governor on an issue near and dear to both our hearts, helping more Americans gain the skills and training they need to succeed in our demanding 21st century economy. In fact, Gina leveraged some of the work we did here with Skills for Chicagoland's Future to help more workers in Rhode Island get the skills they needed to succeed. Given the success in both Rhode Island and Chicago, I'm proud to say that Skills for Chicagoland's Future is now in the midst of a national expansion. I also have had the privilege of working with Secretary Raimondo as she prepared to lead the Department of Commerce in my role as one of the economic leaders of President Biden's transition. We've spent many hours together talking about the role, the agency, and its people, as she focused on how does she do effective execution, something I have no doubt she will talk to us about today and that she will do well for our nation. A powerful servant leader, Secretary Raimondo also asked the most incredibly insightful questions, not only about the job, but also about how the agency could be made more effective to help more Americans improve their economic futures. In her role leading the Department of Commerce, the Secretary is focused on a simple but vital mission to spur good-paying jobs, to empower entrepreneurs to innovate and grow, and to help American workers and businesses compete and thrive. I always like to say that the Commerce Department is a service organization, and its customers are American businesses and American workers. It's an agency with more than 46,000 professionals with a set of diverse missions ranging from protecting patents and trademarks, providing vital economic data, delivering timely and accurate weather forecasts and climate science, protecting U.S. technologies that are vital to our national security and economic competitiveness, providing broadband, and spurring domestic economic development and innovation creation. Now, with the massive infusions of funding that the department will receive in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, as well as the Build Back Better framework, Secretary Raimondo must ensure that her agency is built for the job. To put that into perspective, the department will receive $48 billion out of the $65 billion designated for broadband deployment, when their previous budget was $35 million, and potentially billions more to address our semiconductor crisis. This infusion of funding and extended responsibilities will require both modernization of the organization and innovative leadership. I have no doubt that Secretary Raimondo is up for the job, and I look forward to hearing her discuss this critical work and her leadership of this essential department. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm Chicago welcome to my friend and our nation's 40th U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo.
Thank you, Penny. That was very kind and generous introduction, and I appreciate it. In a few years, you can decide whether I've done a good job as your Commerce Secretary, and you can then either thank or blame Penny because she's a big part of the reason I took this job. When the president asked me if I would be interested to do this, Penny was pretty much the first person I called, and she was, as she always is, generous with her time, candid in her assessment, which I appreciated, and has been there for me every day since, as a supporter, as an advisor, and as a friend. So thank you for your service as Commerce Secretary, and thank you for your friendship. I also want to thank Mary Dillon for hosting me today, and all of you. I have to say I love Chicago. I love it. I love being here. I love your business community. And I think I'm just thrilled to be here with all of you. And I know I have many friends in the audience. So thank you for welcoming here today. Okay, I'm going to put you in a good mood. This is a good news speech that I'm about to give. And I think we could all use a little good news and to be in a good mood. Do we agree? Yeah. So first, the reason why I'm so excited to be in Chicago. I began my day at O'Hare at a press conference with the president of United, obviously United's headquartered here, announcing that as of today, America is open for business again because we have international travel. That is a huge announcement. Our borders are reopened to vaccinated visitors, and I think this is a huge shot in the arm for our economy. The travel and tourism industry has been disproportionately hard hit, and this is very welcome news. I will say I had been quite involved as an advocate within the administration for business to make sure that this got done as quickly as was safely possible. And I think the administration's done a terrific job laying out clear criteria. And today's a very big day. Today is a very big day towards getting us back on track with our economy. I'm also excited to be here because today is my first set of public remarks since the House passed the bipartisan infrastructure deal early in the morning on Saturday. That is, yeah. It's huge. It is huge. It was hard fought. Great credit goes to the president for his tremendous leadership. This is $1 trillion that will be put to work rebuilding America. By the way, $600 million will come to Illinois airports alone. I mean, yeah, wow is right. This is what we need. It's going to replace lead pipes, making sure all Americans have clean drinking water, provide all Americans with affordable broadband, and it'll make the largest ever investment in clean tech vehicles. At the same time, the Build Back Better Act will put billions of dollars into the workforce through workforce training programs, which Penny talked about, bring about public pre-K for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old in America, and make the largest investment ever in climate and innovation. These record investments meet the moment. They meet the moment and are intended to make sure that all American families have a chance to get ahead. I will say, they're not social spending bills. I do bristle a bit when I see press coverage that the president's Build Back Better Act is a social spending bill. It's a bill that enables work. There are 2.5 million women still out of the workforce, in large part because they can't find affordable childcare. The average family in the Chicago area pays $10,000 a year for childcare. So yes, it is good for families. Some have called it the Families Act, but it isn't a social spending bill. It is fundamental to building back better, unleashing talent, and enhancing American competitiveness. By the way, because of the president's insistence that these bills be paid for, they will be paid for, and which means we can make these much needed investments without adding to our deficit. And the fact of the matter is we need both. And I am more optimistic than ever that we will get both. You know, Friday, we can't underestimate how important Friday was. It was a huge step forward for our country, and I think the House will vote the week of November 15th, and we will be on our way. Next piece. Also in the good news category, I was able to announce about a week ago that after months of tough negotiations, we secured an agreement with the EU on steel and aluminum tariffs. Penny knows that was a hard-fought deal. The deal maintains the tariffs, but allows several million tons of steel to come into America tariff-free from the EU. The deal will prevent cheap Chinese steel and aluminum from flooding our markets, which harms industry and harms American workers. It's an important achievement for US consumers, for US families, for US industry. It's also important in easing inflationary tendencies in the downstream markets. We consume steel in so much of what we make, cars, trucks, appliances. So starting January 1st, those prices will go down. No more 25% tariff. It'll help with our supply chain bottlenecks, and it will ease, like I said, it will ease inflationary tendencies. So more good news. I would say President Biden has achieved 2 of the 3 of these already, infrastructure and the deal on the tariffs. He is well positioned to get all 3 out of 3, any one of which of those accomplishments would be a legacy for any president. So I will say, as I said, I've come here delivering good news, and I think with the massive scale of the president's economic agenda, he is off to a terrific start, and I come here feeling very bullish on our economy and bullish on our future. With as Penny said, with these packages comes an unprecedented opportunity for the Commerce Department. We have an opportunity to chart a new course for the Department of Commerce that positions the American economy to leverage short-term growth into long-term prosperity. And so I wanted to spend my time with you this afternoon just laying out my priorities and vision for the Department of Commerce under the President's leadership. Now, as Penny said, the Department of Commerce is sprawling. We deal with everything from fish to space commerce, the patent office, telecommunications, the weather service. A few months ago, I had to go home to Rhode Island for a wedding, and I called a friend and said, what's the weather going to be like this weekend? And she said, don't you run the weather service? Can't you figure that out? So it is sprawling, 50,000 employees across a variety of different topics. So I have said to myself, what is the through line through all of that work? How will we focus and prioritize our work? And the answer is, in everything we do, we're going to focus on enhancing US competitiveness, enhancing the ability of businesses and workers in America to compete more effectively on the global stage. And commerce is uniquely or particularly well positioned to lead on that because we sit at the red-hot center of advanced technology, growing the domestic economy, and strengthening trade and national security. So I think we will see we are coming into kind of a heyday of the Commerce Department, and really our ability to lean in and improve competitiveness is substantial. Before I go into the details, I want to take a minute or two detour to let you know a little bit about me, which is, for me, this is all very personal. It's all very personal. And strengthening our global competitiveness, rebuilding domestic manufacturing, supporting American workers comes from my experience. So I grew up in Rhode Island, not Chicago, Providence, almost as good as Chicago. My dad worked his whole career in a watch factory, the Bulova watch factory in Providence, Rhode Island. Anyone who knows anything about Rhode Island knows that once upon a time, Rhode Island was the jewelry manufacturing capital of America. My dad and all of his friends worked in jewelry manufacturing. His job at the Bulova watch factory gave my family a decent middle-class life. The problem is, after working there for 28 years and loving it, all the jobs moved to China. And he lost his job, just like all of his friends, all of his buddies, everybody was out of work. And I remember that clearly. It shaped who I am today. It shapes the way I do my job every day. Because what I saw was a guy who didn't just lose his job and my family's only paycheck. He lost his pride, he lost his dignity, he lost his confidence. And he was 56 years old when it happened. He had 2 kids in college. And he never really got back on track after that. Now, I share that story with you because I take it with me to my work every day. And the truth of it is, obviously, what happened to my dad wasn't unique. It happened to millions of Americans. It's part of a much bigger story about America's declining investment in our workers and in our economy. During the 1980s and 90s, manufacturers, in search of cheap labor, went to Asia. And in the 40 years since then, our manufacturing sector, our manufacturing workforce, manufacturing innovation has atrophied significantly from chronic disinvestment. So when President-elect Biden called me and asked me to leave my job as governor, I was in the middle of my second term, and asked me to do this job, I talked to Penny, as I said, but I called my brother, my older brother. I said, hey, should I do this? He said, Gina, you have to do that because Dad would be so proud if he thought you could play a role in rebuilding domestic manufacturing. And so that's why I took this job. And the truth of it is, you're all successful business people. As all of you know, for business to be successful, you have to invest in your core strengths, in your systems, in your people, in your product. And that is true for our economy. So I want to talk to you about 3 priorities that I have for the Department of Commerce under the umbrella of investing in America and improving our global competitiveness. First, supply chains. Maybe you haven't heard, but we have some bottlenecks in our supply chains. Here's the reality. To compete globally, we have to invest domestically. Invest in ourselves. As I just told that story about my dad, that's one person, but the reality is we allowed our manufacturing base to shrink and move overseas. And in so doing, we've exposed ourselves to serious supply chain vulnerabilities. A year and a half ago when I was governor, I had many sleepless nights trying to get my hands on PPE and ventilators for the people of Rhode Island. And they were sleepless because I was up at 2 in the morning because it was only calling Asia, China and Vietnam, because we weren't making enough in America. And it's not just PPE, it's pharmaceuticals, it's semiconductors, it's so many different products. 25% of America's small and medium-sized manufacturers have disappeared. By the way, a lot of them were in the Midwest, probably a lot in Illinois. Nowhere is this more acute, our supply chain problems, than in the semiconductor industry. If you were to stop and think about how much our lives revolve around semiconductors, it's incredible. They're the building blocks that power our modern digital economy. From your coffee maker, to your car, to your smartphone, to your computer, to all advanced technology in AI and cloud computing. Basically anything with an on-off switch, semiconductors. Here's the thing. The semiconductor industry was invented and started in the United States of America. Today, we produce 12% of the world's chips. 20 years ago, it was 40%. Even scarier, today, we produce 0% of the world's leading edge semiconductors. We buy 60% from Taiwan. That is an economic security problem and a national security problem. It's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to lead again and create millions of jobs in America in the process. As Penny said, the Department of Commerce is poised to receive $52 billion to fund and incentivize domestic semiconductor production, and another $5 billion to launch a supply chain resiliency office. Those 2 initiatives we will use to create new tools and processes so we can get ahead of and predict and prepare for future supply chain disruptions. And I plan to work in very close partnership with business in all of that work. Government cannot do this alone. The private sector runs supply chains. So with this money coming to commerce, as I said, we want to get ahead of supply chain issues, prepare for resiliency, and I want to do it in partnership with the business community. If I do my job right, that $50 billion from the public sector will be turned into $150 or $200 billion, leveraging private capital. My second area of focus, first, supply chains and semiconductors. Second is closing the digital divide and closing the innovation divide. We have to ensure that people all across America, including in the heartland of America, can fully participate in the tech and digital economy, in the innovation economy. And that means closing the digital divide, closing the innovation divide. I hope we can all agree, after seeing the heartbreaking stories last year of children not being able to go to school because they didn't have broadband, businesses closing because they didn't have broadband or access to broadband, people couldn't go to the doctor because they didn't have access to broadband. It is time to ensure that every single American has affordable, high-speed broadband, regardless of where you live or the color of your skin. And as Secretary Pritzker said, through the infrastructure deal, which was finalized on Friday, the Commerce Department will receive nearly $50 billion to implement universal high-speed broadband. This is a massive undertaking. It's on the long list of things that keep me up at night. How are we going to do it? We're going to do it by focusing on accountability, transparency, and partnership. I want to do it in partnership with states, with counties, with cities, and with the private sector. We will be having a grant program, and the goal will be to work in partnership to ensure that every American has access to broadband. Again, I want to partner. This will be a series of public-private partnerships. Executing is among the most difficult work that we will do. Good ideas, there's a lot of them. Getting it done on the ground is the hard part. So to do that, you need ground truth. Where do you get the ground truth? People on the ground, in local communities, unions, and the private sector. So I look forward to implementing that program in close partnership. Once we get everybody connected, then our innovation economy can spread to all corners of America. Here's the reality. There's a lot of talk about America's place in the world, how do we compete? This is a fact. America has the world's best universities, world's best research centers, world's best entrepreneurs. Everybody still wants to start a business in America. We continue to attract top talent from all around the world. And we have to make sure that the conditions are in place that that continues to be the case. The reality is, for decades, we've underinvested in basic research and innovation, the fundamental building block of innovation. China's growth rate in R&D spending is more than 3 times ours. And we've fallen to 10th place in R&D as a percent of our GDP. If we want to remain at the forefront of innovation, we need to expand our R&D investments and move innovations from the lab to the marketplace at 21st century speed. As part of the Build Back Better Act, the Commerce Department is poised to receive $3.5 billion to invest in regional tech hubs all across the country. The Build Back Better Act also invests in the National Science Foundation, upgrades labs all across the country, and expands climate science innovation. Fundamental R&D, which will then turn into jobs and products in the marketplace. Through these tech hubs, which we will be managing, our goal is to spur innovation, incentivize innovation in critical areas like artificial intelligence, robotics, quantum computing, biotechnology, and to do it in communities all across America, in the heartland, not just on the coast, not just in Silicon Valley, Boston, New York, Austin, Texas. Out here in the Midwest, in the South, in the Southeast. Those half a dozen communities have a lock on the capital, the venture capital. They do not have a lock on the best ideas and entrepreneurs and research. And so we are going to be implementing the tech hubs in partnership with folks on the ground to get capital and resources to American entrepreneurs with the best ideas, without regard to their race or their gender or what geography they happen to be located in. Which leads me to our third area of focus, which is America's workforce. For decades, America has spent a fraction of other advanced economies on workforce. Our most precious resource, our people. When I became governor, I said that at the time I became governor, Rhode Island had a train and pray approach to job training. We would train folks and pray they got a job. And then we came in and we turned that upside down. And we went from training to hiring very successfully. And as Penny said, we learned a lot from Chicago. We created skills for Rhode Island's future, very much aligned with skills for Chicagoland's future. Commerce Department is poised to work together with the Labor Department with a $5 billion investment from the Build Back Better Act for sector-based partnerships, training workers for jobs of the future, jobs that exist. And actually, for the first time ever in commerce's history, a couple of months ago, we launched our own grant program, a $500 million grant program, investing in industry-led workforce training and apprenticeships, with an extra emphasis on women and people of color and underserved communities. But I will say this, government cannot do this alone. We need leadership from you in your businesses. It's not enough for business to be at the job training table, you have to be at the center of the job training table. We need business to help us design effective workforce programs so that we know we are training folks in what you will hire, but frankly, we also need you to commit to hiring people with unconventional backgrounds, even if they don't check all the traditional boxes. If folks have the courage mid-career to go get trained and take on a new job, then we have to be there for them and we have to hire them, even if they don't have a 4-year college degree. 70% of Americans don't have a 4-year college degree. So I'm asking you to work in partnership with us and look beyond the traditional hiring and consider hiring somebody who might not have that perfect traditional background, but who has the skills and training and competencies necessary to do the job that you need them to do. Because if we do that together, we will improve American competitiveness because you will have access to the talent with the skills that you need, and of course will help folks to make sure they have good jobs. Underpinning all of our work in these 3 priorities is the value of equity. Equity in everything that we do. One area of commerce is the MBDA, Minority Business Development Agency. It's typically a $20 million operation. We're poised to get $1.6 billion from the Build Back Better Act, further to the reimagining of commerce. This is going to enable us to support more minority businesses through entrepreneurship, training, rural business centers, access to capital, contracts, and markets. And I think this will be a huge opportunity to create more opportunity for people of color and overlooked communities. But again, business is core to this work of equity. We need business leaders, and I know many of you in this room do this. You have to look at inclusion efforts as core to your business, not an HR checkbox. The reality is, studies show cash flows for diverse companies are more than double that of companies with less diverse workforces. The reality is that we still have 2 million women who've dropped out of the workforce in COVID that aren't yet back into the workforce. If we want to be competitive, if we want to unleash the full productivity of America, we need everybody at the table. And we need affordable childcare so women can be at the table at every level of business. I recently heard a tech leader say, homogeneity is the enemy of innovation. I think that's exactly right. Our diversity is part of our competitive advantage as Americans. So we have to tap into that, train folks, and unleash that full potential. And again, I look forward to partnering with all of you in order to make that a reality. I'll conclude with this thought. And I really believe this, and I've spent the past 12 years in public office. As a nation, we are at a critical time and at an inflection point. And where we go from here is up to us. It's about the choices we make. If we together choose to tap into America's greatest strengths, our innovative spirit, our entrepreneurs, our diversity of talent, our best-in-class universities, our strong relationships with our allies around the world, we will outcompete everyone. I believe that. I believe that. I am bullish on America, on our businesses, on our workers, on our entrepreneurs. But we have to make those choices. We have to be willing to do things differently, government and business. When the President's economic agenda in these two bills passes, the Commerce Department is set to receive more than $100 billion. And with that, we will reimagine the way we do commerce and reimagine the way we position our economy for long-term success. And I would invite you to do the same with your businesses. Invite you to do the same with your businesses, reimagining how you do business to enhance your company's competitiveness, US economy's competitiveness, and to reduce the inequality that we see in America, which the President says is eating away at the soul of America. We cannot sustain the level of inequality that we now have. So many of our other problems as a country stem from that. I think we will meet the demands of the moment. I think we all will together make these investments, find talent, democratize the way we make investments, have these regional tech hubs, and we will flourish and we will outcompete. And that is our challenge. So as we recover from the pandemic, now is the time for business and government to work hand in hand to rebuild the American economy. And I want you to hear from me directly that I'm excited to do that with you. Work hand in hand with the business leaders of Chicago to rebuild this economy, rebuild America's economy, and really improve together America's long-term global competitiveness.
I will say I told Secretary Raimondo at lunch I've never interviewed a Secretary of Commerce before, so I asked her what I should call her, and she said Gina. So we're going to go with that. But first of all, before we don't have, I think we probably have about 20 minutes or so. I have so many questions. I'm going to try to use the time as best I can. But while we have you here, I think it's just a fantastic opportunity to just learn about you some more personally, because your career has been amazing. We appreciate your service and everything you've done. What you did in Rhode Island during the pandemic is nothing, short of heroic, seriously. But anyway, so we started to talk a little bit at lunch. I think one thing we have in common is that we're both first-generation college graduates. In fact, your story about your father reminded me a lot of mine because it was at that same age that his job in manufacturing and steel also went away. So it's interesting. I also read that you were the first girl to go to your Catholic school in your community. First girl admitted, and I think you became the valedictorian, if my facts are correct. So. But I'd just love to maybe have you expand a little bit more personally on how your background, I know you spoke to some of this, but how it shaped your leadership journey.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. So it is true. I went to a Christian Brothers high school in Providence, Rhode Island, LaSalle Academy, which had been all boys. And they weren't totally sure what to do with us when we arrived. I think my class was like 25% girls, 75% boys, but they were fantastic. The Christian Brothers embraced us, and it was really life-giving for the school to let girls come in. So, it's just a lot of what I said. I mean, like so many of you, I was raised on sort of basic values of hard work. My family had an immigrant experience, came to this country from Italy, and just really pounded into us the value of education and hard work. My mother said the three great values: family, faith, and food. That's like what sustains every Italian family: family, faith, and food. It's actually why I do what I do, having had this extraordinary good fortune and a lot of luck and love to have started, where my family started, and then have had the opportunities that I've had. That's why I serve. You know, it's why I left my job in the private sector. I was a partner in my own firm. I had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. Things were going great. I called my parents to say I wanted to go into politics. My mother started crying. She said, talk to your father. You have such a good job. Why are you doing this? But I believe in service. So anyway, I think for too many, the American dream is out of reach, and it's on the rest of us to make sure that everybody has a chance.
Well, it says a lot about your courage that A, you thought it was a good idea to be the first class of girls entering an all-boys school, and secondly, that you wanted to go into politics, which is not easy, but we appreciate. So let's talk about, well, first of all, it is officially infrastructure year now, right?
Yes, exactly.
No, but it's really, I mean, the passage of the bill is a huge accomplishment, and as you said, that along with the negotiations with Europe on, you know, tariffs on aluminum and steel, very, very helpful. But maybe one question, to just bring a little bit of politics in, but really what I want to talk about is how we're going to implement. But it has not been easy to get to this point, and there's still the whole other part of the Build Back Better Act, which is around maybe more human infrastructure, right? So education and childcare, climate change. So what do you think is the likelihood of getting that done? And even if the first two alone, as you said, are done, that's historic. But it's been a little bit complicated. I think within the party there's been, you know, different dynamics that have made it challenging. But what do you think is next, and how do we move ahead, whether or not the third part gets done?
So I do think it will all get done. I do. It will not be easy. It will have many twists and turns. It won't happen as quickly as any of us want. But I do believe it will get done. I will say, not just because he's my boss, but President Biden is an extraordinary leader, and he gets in there himself, engaging with members of Congress to get the votes. And that is why we got this done. You know, he will spend however much time it takes selling the agenda, listening to folks. And so I am very optimistic that we will get the Build Back Better Act. It's hard, you know, it is as hard as it seems. As hard as it seems from the outside, it's maybe even harder from the inside. You see it in your own companies, I'm sure. You know, as Nancy Pelosi said, the Democratic Party is not a lockstep party. You know, several of the progressives didn't vote for the infrastructure bill.
Right.
It's unbelievable to me. So, to my mind, this infrastructure bill is, you know, like I said, 30 million Americans don't have broadband. This bill allows every single American to get broadband. Every airport in America needs to be, you know, repaired, renovated, rebuilt. That's what this will do. So in any event, but it is a challenge. You know, I was on the phone at 11 o'clock Friday night trying to whip votes with Democrats, moderate Democrats. So you just have to be relentless and stick with it.
Right. Well, we're pulling for it. I'd love to shift gears to talk about the labor market. It's just an interesting time because I feel like the facts are so conflicting in some ways, right? Because you know, the recent jobs report obviously was hugely positive. So many new jobs, over 500,000 created in October, unemployment going down. But then, as you've already talked about, there's a gap. There's people that have left the workforce, particularly with women. I think there's like 10 million jobs that are looking for workers right now. So and you see it, you know, everywhere you go in terms of companies being short-staffed. So cutting back on hours or days of the week open, et cetera. So maybe talk a little bit more, and I think this dovetails obviously with the retraining of the workforce and some of the things you talked about, but how do we kind of close that gap, that mismatch between jobs available and not being able to hire enough people in certain sectors of the economy?
Yeah. So look, I really do think this child care issue that I talk about all the time is critical. You know, I think it's $9,800 a year on average in the Chicago area for child care. You know, say you have a few kids. That's not affordable. If you're a woman, if you're a mom, and you can make $15 an hour, $20 an hour, and you're going to pay $12 or $13 for a babysitter, you might not go back into the workforce either. So in any event, that's not the only issue, obviously, but often people say, you're the commerce person, why do you talk so much about affordable childcare? Because it's necessary. There's 2.5 million women out of the workforce who want to work, who you want to hire. So I think like universal pre-K will matter. I saw it in Rhode Island, it does matter. Some of it is skills, as you say. We have 500,000 jobs open now for cyber technicians. We don't have enough people trained in that skill. And by the way, you don't need a college degree. So some of it is realigning our workforce development resources with the needs of today's economy in biotech, in digital, in cyber. You know, every company's a digital company now. Data, there aren't nearly enough data analysts, so we need to take folks and try to retrain them. So I think the skills mismatch is also real. And then finally, COVID. You know, I applaud businesses that are mandating vaccines. It will help you hire folks. I mean, people want to work in a place they feel safe, and they don't want to have to guess or wonder, is Mary, my coworker here, vaccinated? So I think all those things go together.
Great. Well, let's see. Maybe another topic I'd love to just get your perspective on is you said there's so much money now that the Commerce Department is going to deploy, and the government in total. Believe me, in Chicago, we feel very well suited to be able to help activate that agenda. I mean, our aspiration is to be a regional, one of the top tier tech hubs. You know, we've got great universities and workforce and many areas of the economy that we support. So I guess I would step back and say, as you think about the deployment.
I'm starting to get that feeling that you're going to lock me in this room and not let me out until I commit to a regional
How
tech
about
hub in Illinois.
Maybe. But as you think about deployment I mean, it's such a complex task, and it's a lot of money, and it's great that it's happened quickly, but then how do we bring it to life? So I think there's kind of two questions. Maybe one is, what are the criteria or screens you think that will be used, for example, to think about, okay, where does the broadband money get deployed, or the regional tech investments? What kind of screens or criteria? And then probably equally important, so how do we actually get it done, right? How is your department set up and ready? Again, I'm sure it'll be working with people on the ground, as you said, in the private sector too, but how do we get it done?
Yeah, we cannot underestimate the enormity of these challenges. I mean, if the president's agenda is fully enacted, it's an enormous execution challenge for those of us in the government. We're up to it, we will do it, but I think we need to be eyes wide open around how complicated it will be. And I will say, as governor, I learned that the hard way. Every major mistake I made as governor was execution. It is hard to implement and operationalize. Operationalizing great ideas in the public sector is not easy. In the private sector either. So in any event, I've done it. I have learned the hard way after being a public executive, and I will bring those skills, hiring the right talent, having good systems, obsession with transparency, being outcome focused. Not just process focused, outcome focused, I think are all critical things. With respect to broadband, the goal is clear, which is to focus on the unserved and the underserved. What we can't allow to happen is a lot of overbuilding. If we were to take our $50 billion and do frankly what has been done in the past sometimes by the government, overbuild in places that already have access to broadband, that would be a mistake. A third of people who live in rural America have no affordable high-speed broadband. 50% of people who live in tribal lands have no affordable high-speed broadband. So that is our focus, getting to places that don't have it and also making it affordable. By the way, and also I want to make sure the money can be used for digital literacy, training, and equipment. What good is the broadband if your kid can't have an iPad or a computer? So it's all about access and affordability. The regional tech hubs, again, it's as I said, we have certain areas that we want to focus, and we know what they are: biotech, AI, data, the emerging technology areas. We want to find the nodes of innovation and core R&D all across the country and ask ourselves, where could our money stimulate what's already happening so that we get a flywheel going. The reason Silicon Valley is because they have critical mass. Critical mass. So other places have pieces, but not critical mass. And so we want to use our investment so that at the end of it, we've built the whole ecosystem around these critical areas of emerging technology.
So just a couple of follow-ups. One is on the broadband deployment. How do you think about inner city needs? I know you talked about rural, and that's important, but I think we also know that there's so many inner city children that don't have access, reliable access.
So I would say it's the same principle, which is it's all access and affordability. So for example, in Rhode Island, which is there's no rural Rhode Island. It's a city state, it is urban, it's the second most densely populated state in the country. In Rhode Island, the issues, inner city, it's not that there's no fiber. Everyone has, there's broadband everywhere. It's all affordability. So if you live in a senior high-rise apartment building in a city, the area may have broadband, but your apartment building might not be connected. And if it is, it might not be affordable. So in those places, we'll use our money for the connectivity to the building and affordability. In the rural areas, it'll be laying fiber. But at the end of the day, I'll have done my job if everybody has access at an affordable rate. And by the way, $100 a month is not affordable. For some people, affordable is free or $5 a month. And so that's where we have to be.
And on maybe, for example, the regional tech hub investments, what advice, if any, would you give to any part of the country? I'm not just plugging Chicago, but kind of how to think about the criteria and process that'll be used as we think about the deployment.
So I think there is start to catalog all of the resources in your community around research and development, talent, business ecosystem related to emerging technologies. So that's what I would do. And figure out what your focus will be. Are you going to try to focus on biotech? Are you going to try to focus on robotics? And what are all the resources that already exist? And then the real thing for me is, well, what will happen with our money? As I said, with the semiconductors, if all I do is take the $50 billion and invest it, then that's kind of a failure. The $50 billion should turn into $150 billion and a lot of jobs and public-private investment. Well, the same for these tech hubs. They have to catalyze more private sector and university activity.
Right. On the semiconductor topic, which I learned some things from your comments today, I didn't know about the history in our country, but can you say more about how you see that specific aspect of domestic manufacturing coming to life?
Yeah. So as I said, if you were to really think about it, it's kind of frightening. That we don't make any, say, artificial intelligence or high-end computing requires these leading-edge chips, of which we make none in America. So, by the way, it's also in a lot of military equipment. So we really have to be fixing this. The money will be used to incentivize companies to set up shop in America. Build new manufacturing facilities in America. And by the way, not just US companies. Samsung, TSMC. We want them building factories, manufacturing facilities on American soil. And then what we should see is around those facilities, the supply chain will develop, just like anything else. When you have the big company, supply chains develop, training centers develop. I saw that there's some universities now that are putting together master's degrees for semiconductor engineering. Well, so imagine if you had a new fab, a new manufacturing facility, you would start to see university research increasing. Research is coming there, supply chains going there, and that's what we want to create.
Is there anything else on the supply chain challenge that you can give us some perspective on? I think we've learned more about chips than I ever thought we'd know in our lives, right? And chips. No, I'm not saying from you, but just in general. I think we know.
Just be thankful you're not my children.
Exactly.
They're like, Mom, enough with the chips.
But I think that's become a stark reality, as well as ships. So chips and ships, but seeing ships out stuck in ports and whatnot. And we know that I'm in the retail business. Everybody's trying to tell everybody to shop early, right? Is there anything else that you think that either the government can do or private sector can do to kind of unclog this current situation on supply chain? So more immediate, I guess.
Yeah. So first of all, it's complicated, complex, and there really truly is no one thing. There's no silver bullet to this one. It's a lot of things. First is transparency. I have observed in certain supply chains, there's a total lack of transparency, which leads to lack of trust. Lack of transparency erodes trust. So the suppliers are wondering, where are all the products going? And they get suspicious that certain consuming companies are hoarding or stockpiling. They don't have an accurate demand signal to produce. The consumers get told the day before, by the way, your allocation's being cut in half, so they get suspicious. Who's getting what I was promised? So I think increasing transparency, as simple as that sounds, will go a long way towards working out the short-term kinks and building up some trust. Like I already said, I think increasing domestic production is critical. Cheap labor isn't everything. Yes, it's less expensive in Vietnam and China, but look at what we're facing now. We have to go from just in time to just in case. We have to produce in America. Talent is a huge issue. We've talked about this. Manufacturers are struggling to find the talent that they need with the advanced manufacturing skills that they have. So I think working on that will be extremely important. The final thing I'll say is this. I'll try to be brief, but you could talk all day about it. Ports in America continue to be quite paper-based and even cash-based. And it's not just ports, it's the whole logistics chain. So moving away from everything being paper-based and digitally enabling more of our logistics chain would help enormously. Now that's not an overnight thing, right. But it's a thing that will help.
Well, I feel like our time has been way too short. I have so many more questions than we've had time to get to. But maybe let me, I was going to ask you about the weather in Chicago this winter, but I won't ask you to predict that for us. I think we know.
Cold.
But maybe I'll just end with, is there anything what does a successful 2022 look like to you? In your role, tell me what you're excited about, what you're hoping gets accomplished.
I hope that we can launch all these new initiatives and do it successfully. No big mistakes, shovels in the ground, starting to see. Look, I think American people want to see things happening in their communities. This is my own view, as a former politician. We've talked enough about the process of getting this done. Let's get it done. To the business of doing it. So that's that's where we come in. Let's get to the business of doing it. Actually bringing broadband to people, actually creating some tech hubs in the heartland, training people. And I think that's what we need, and that's what I'm excited to do.
Well, that's fantastic. I know we have a lot of people in this room who like to get things done too, so it would look to help you with that. So I would just say on behalf of the Economic Club of Chicago, Secretary Raimondo, Gina, thank you so much for being the first place that you were able to talk after the bill got passed.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody for joining the program today. We look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care. Thank you.